I didn't raise her from birth, but I showed up every day in every way that counted. I paid her tuition, cleared her debt, covered her rent when she swore she'd pay me back. I never asked for thanks. I never asked to be called dad. I just believed that love, eventually, would be enough. But the day I finally said no, the day I drew a boundary and told her I couldn't keep paying, she looked me in the eye and said, "You're not even my real father." That's when I realized I wasn't family to her. I was just the checkbook. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you're watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. I never went into fatherhood with any grand declarations. No, I'll be your dad now. No awkward handshake or speeches about stepping up. I just showed up. That's how I've lived most of my life. Quiet presence, dependable hands. I married Laura when her daughter, Kayla, was 15, right in the middle of that beautiful storm of teenage rebellion and emotional landmines. She didn't smile much back then. Her eyes, always sharp, carried this silent calculation, as if she was still measuring me, figuring out whether I was temporary or something she had to accept. I never pushed it. I just did what I knew how to do. I stayed. I remember the first time she asked me for something directly, not through her mom, not as part of some logistical family talk. She was 17, a senior in high school. Her car, an old hand-me-down from Laura's brother, broke down 2 days before a big track meet. She called me, not Laura. That meant something back then. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice tight, embarrassed, vulnerable. I left work early, got it towed, paid for the repairs. I didn't even mention the money. That wasn't the point. The point was she came to me, trusted me. That's the thing about trust. It starts so small, you barely notice when it begins. But once it's there, it becomes the foundation. And I built my entire relationship with Kayla on that kind of trust. Not flashy, not loud, just constant. I helped her with college applications, edited essays, even taught her how to set up a budget. She didn't always listen, of course. Sometimes she'd roll her eyes and say I was trying to dad too hard, but it was always laced with this begrudging affection. I thought we were building something solid. When she got into her top choice, a private university with a sticker price that made my stomach tighten, I didn't hesitate. Laura cried when the letter came. Kayla screamed and jumped into her arms. And I smiled, already doing the mental math in the background. Tuition, housing, books, flights home for the holidays. I had some savings, a decent job, and a belief, maybe naive, that investing in her future was the right thing to do. Isn't that what parents do? It was never just about the money, though. I'd drive her to campus, helped her move in, hauled up all her bins and bags in August heat. I was the one who remembered to bring extra extension cords and a toolkit. Every time she thanked me, those early years, there was this spark in her voice, like she really saw me. Not as a stepdad, not as Laura's husband, just me, someone who gave a damn. The thing is, I never once asked to be thanked. Not truly. I didn't keep receipts. I didn't hold things over her head. That's not love, is it? That's a transaction. And I wasn't building a bank account with Kayla. I thought I was building a bond. College wasn't cheap. Halfway through her junior year, she maxed out a credit card. She called me crying. She didn't want her mom to know. Said she felt stupid. Said she was drowning. I paid it off. Just like that. Told her we'd make a plan together so it wouldn't happen again. She hugged me so tightly that night, I thought maybe, just maybe, she finally saw how much I cared. But looking back now, I think that was the moment the line blurred. Where support became expectation. Where generosity became obligation. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow creep. A gas bill here. An emergency rent situation there. After graduation, she moved back home briefly and then wanted help putting down a deposit on her first apartment. I gave it willingly. Because of course I did. Laura noticed. "You spoil her," she said once, half joking, half concerned. I shrugged it off. "She's trying," I'd say. "She just needs a little time." But part of me already felt it, the weight. The quiet pressure of always being the safety net. The one who doesn't say no. The one who fixes it all. And the truth is, I didn't mind being that person. Not at first. It felt like love. It felt like purpose. Like I was finally needed. But love, when unbalanced, has a way of curdling. When it's taken for granted, unnoticed, it stops feeling like love and starts feeling like servitude. I kept that to myself, of course. Who wants to admit they're growing resentful of someone they love? One evening, about a year after she started working full-time, she came over for dinner. Nothing fancy. Laura made pasta, and we opened a bottle of wine. Kayla talked about her job, her boss, the latest drama with friends. Then, halfway through dessert, she dropped it casually, like she was asking me to pass the salt. Hey, I'm thinking of applying to grad school. There's this program in Chicago. Tuition's kind of insane, though. But I know you've always said education is the best investment, right? I felt it, right then. A quiet snap inside me. I didn't say no. Not that night. But I didn't say yes either. I just smiled tightly and said we'd talk about it. And later, lying in bed next to Laura, staring up at the ceiling in the dark, I asked the question I'd been avoiding for years. When do I stop being her safety net? Laura didn't answer right away. She just sighed. And in that sigh, I heard everything. It started with little things. That's always how it goes, right? No one wakes up one morning and decides to take you for granted. It's a slow erosion, like water against rock. First, she asked if I could spot her for groceries during a tight month. Just until payday, she said. Then it was, my check got held up. Can you cover my car insurance? Eventually, it became so casual I stopped hearing the word please. What made it worse, what twisted the knife just a little deeper, was that she always said it with a laugh. That soft, breezy chuckle, like we were just sharing an inside joke. Ugh, being broke in your 20s is a full-time job. You're a lifesaver, as always. And every time I handed her that card, clicked send on another transfer, I'd nod like I was in on it too. But I wasn't laughing. Not anymore. The thing about giving is, once people get used to it, they stop seeing it as generosity. It becomes routine, expected. And the more I gave, the more I realized I had trained her to believe I wouldn't say no. Because I never had. Until that point, I had never once drawn a line. One Saturday morning, we were having coffee at our kitchen table. Me, Laura, and Kayla, who had come by unannounced, which she often did. She'd just gotten a new haircut and was scrolling through her phone, showing Laura some shoes she wanted for a wedding that weekend. They're only $180, she said. But I can't justify it right now. Mom, can you ask your husband to help? She said it just like that. Not can I ask him? Not do you think he'd mind? Just can you ask your husband to help? I looked at her, stunned silent for a beat. She didn't even glance at me. Her thumb kept scrolling like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. That was the first time it really hit me. She didn't see me anymore. Not as a parent. Not even as a person, really. I had become a resource. An invisible one, at that. Reliable, convenient, always there. Laura caught my expression, and to her credit, she tried to smooth it over. Honey, maybe this isn't the best time to ask. No, it's fine. I cut in, forcing a tight smile. Kayla, if it's urgent, I'll help. But let's talk next time before making assumptions. Her eyes finally met mine, but there was no remorse, just annoyance. It's not urgent, it's just a pair of shoes. Don't make it weird. And right there, in our own kitchen, I felt myself shrink. Like my entire worth to her had been reduced to the number of digits in my account. Not dad. Not even stepdad. Just the guy who pays. After she left, I asked Laura if I was overreacting. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the years of silent sacrifice were starting to bleed into misplaced sensitivity. But Laura didn't offer much comfort. She's just used to leaning on you, she said with a shrug. You've always been her rock. It's not a bad thing. But it was a bad thing. Because being someone's rock shouldn't mean being ground down into dust. It all escalated in April. Kayla had recently started a job she hated, something in marketing, long hours, terrible boss. One night, she came over in tears. I was the one who made tea, who sat with her on the couch while she vented about how lost she felt. She said she wanted to go back to school, get a master's degree, reinvent herself. I know it's expensive, she said softly, curling into the blanket like a child again. But I'd work while I study. I need help getting started. I nodded, already running numbers in my head. Tuition, rent in a new city, how much I could spare each month, whether I could dip into my retirement. Again, she must have seen the hesitation in my eyes because her tone shifted fast. I'm not asking for a handout. You supported me through undergrad because you believed in me, right? Why would this be any different? It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them. Like it was owed. Like all those years of support had created a permanent contract that I wasn't allowed to renegotiate. I didn't answer that night. Said I needed to think. And that's when the pressure campaign began. Texts, calls. Laura, casually, bringing it up at dinner. One evening, I found a printed brochure on my desk, highlighted sections and all. When I confronted Laura, she just said, "She's nervous. She's afraid you'll say no." And frankly, so am I. That was the moment I felt something break. Not a snap, not a loud, dramatic fracture. Just a slow, sad crack. A realization that this wasn't love anymore. This was manipulation dressed up as family. A few days later, I sat Kayla down. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her I loved her, that I had been proud to support her, that I always saw her as my own. But I was done. I couldn't keep funding her dreams at the expense of my own peace. That I deserved to enjoy the life I'd built. That saying no wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation. She stared at me for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then she stood up. "So that's it," she said, voice tight. "All those years of pretending to be my father, and now you're just what? Done? Is that what family means to you?" And without waiting for a response, she walked out. The door didn't slam. She didn't yell. But somehow, that quiet exit hurt more than anything she could have screamed. I sat there for a long time after, the words echoing in my head, pretending to be my father. Pretending. I didn't sleep the night after Kayla walked out. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, eyes dry, heart heavy. Laura curled away from me like I was the villain in a story I hadn't realized I was starring in. My thoughts spiraled in loops. Was I too harsh? Did I owe her more? Was I actually abandoning her? But beneath all the guilt, there was something else, a flicker of clarity. For the first time, I could see the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I had mistaken silence for peace. I had believed that being needed was the same as being loved. I had let a girl's survival become my responsibility, and now, I was the one drowning. I didn't hear from Kayla for 4 days. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive repost on social media. Just silence. Laura said nothing either, but I could feel the tension like static in the air. Every shared meal felt like a standoff. We weren't fighting, but we weren't fine. Then came the escalation. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just come home from work, loosened my tie, kicked off my shoes. I opened my email, expecting invoices or the usual nonsense from HR, and there it was. An email from Kayla. Long, formal, polished. It started with, "I've put a lot of thought into this," and ended with, "If you truly loved me like a daughter, you would want to help me build a future, not walk away when things get hard." She outlined her financial plan, the cost of the grad program, her projected income after graduation, and how, with just a little support, she'd be able to thrive. But the tone wasn't one of request. It was entitlement disguised as logic. A proposal, not a plea. She signed it with her full name. Not "Love, Kayla." Not even "Thanks." Just her name. Like I was a bank officer she was petitioning for a loan. I stared at that email for nearly 10 minutes, scrolling up and down, rereading every line like it would suddenly make sense. Then I closed my laptop. Later that night, when Laura brought it up, casually, of course, I told her I had made my decision. "I'm not paying for it." She blinked, startled. "You're serious?" "Yes. I've already given everything I had to give." There was a pause. She set her wine glass down slowly, like any sudden movement might set off an explosion. "She's just scared," she said. "She doesn't know how to do this without you." "She should," I said. "She's 25. She's trying to better herself." "No, she's trying to keep me on the hook." The silence after that was thick, like smoke. Laura didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. And that told me everything I needed to know. 2 days later, Kayla showed up at the house. I hadn't seen her in over a week, and when she walked in, tight-lipped, arms crossed, it was clear she wasn't here to reconnect. She sat down across from me at the dining table, the same table where I'd once taught her to fill out a FAFSA, the same place I'd signed my name on the first tuition check. I got your non-response, she said flatly. It was a response, I said, just not the one you wanted. Her nostrils flared. You said you believed in me. I did, I said. I do. But belief doesn't mean funding every stage of your life. She scoffed. Funny. That's not what it meant when I was 18 and drowning in bills. And I helped you, I said, for years. Without question. But you're not a teenager anymore, Kayla. You're an adult. At some point, you have to stand on your own. Her voice cracked thin, high and sharp. You're abandoning me. Don't dress it up as tough love. You're walking away like I'm nothing. No, I said, and I felt the words rise up from somewhere deeper than anger, deeper than exhaustion. I'm walking away from being used. There's a difference. That's when she exploded. You're not even my real dad, she shouted. You just married my mom. You were never in my life when it actually mattered, and now you want to act like cutting me off is some noble gesture? Spare me. The words hit like a brick to the chest. I didn't react right away, just stared at her, blinking, waiting for the air to return to my lungs. She stood up, breathing hard, eyes glassy but not quite crying. You think money makes you a parent? You think paying bills gives you the right to hold it over me forever? That's not love. That's control. And then, before I could respond, she turned and stormed out. This time, the door did slam. I sat there, stunned. The house echoed with the weight of what she'd said. You're not even my real dad. I thought I had braced myself for that. I thought I had accepted that I was always going to be second tier. But hearing it out loud, so cruel, so definitive, cut deeper than anything else ever had. When Laura came home later, I told her what happened. She didn't defend Kayla, but she didn't defend me either. She's hurt, she said softly. She feels like you've turned your back on her. No, I said. She's just finally realizing I was never a bottomless well. And now she's angry it's run dry. Laura didn't argue. She just stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes glossy with a guilt I couldn't read anymore. I went to bed alone that night. Not physically, but emotionally. There was no comfort in our silence anymore. There was no warmth. Only a growing distance neither of us wanted to admit had always been there. The house felt different after that night. Like something essential had cracked and was now quietly, permanently, broken. It wasn't just Kayla's absence, it was Laura too. We still spoke, still moved through the motions of shared space. But the warmth had drained from her voice, like every sentence was balancing on the edge of something unsaid. I tried to carry on like normal. I still went to work, still mowed the lawn, still took out the trash every Thursday. But inside, something in me had gone eerily still. Numb almost. I'd spent so long stretching myself to meet the needs of someone else that I didn't quite know how to exist when I stopped. At first, there was just silence. No calls. No texts. No "Dad, I'm sorry." No attempt at repair. Days passed. Then a week. Then two. Laura didn't bring her up much, but when she did, it always came wrapped in guilt. She's hurting, she'd say softly, eyes flickering across the dinner table like I might shatter if she looked directly at me. So am I, I'd reply. She never had a response to that. Then the call started. Not from Kayla, from others. Laura's sister, a cousin, one of Kayla's old coaches who still lived in town. All of them suddenly reaching out, with voices full of concern and not so subtle judgment. I heard things got tense between you and Kayla, her aunt said. She's always looked up to you, you know. You were such a positive figure in her life, said the coach. She's feeling really let down right now. And then, my favorite. It's not like she asked for a house, right? Just some support. She's your daughter. That last one came from Laura's cousin, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, but who apparently felt qualified to weigh in on the complexity of my household finances and emotional labor. I didn't bother correcting them. I didn't tell them about the tuition, the rent, the credit card bailouts, the emergency loans I never asked to be repaid. I didn't tell them that for nearly 10 years, I had poured time, money, and love into someone who now told me I was never really her father. No, I let them talk. I listened quietly, murmured something vague, and ended each call with the same polite lie. Thanks for checking in. We'll be okay. But inside, I wasn't okay. I was furious, not in the yelling, table-pounding kind of way, but the quiet, soul-deep anger that comes from being misunderstood by people who were never there in the first place. People who saw the blow-up, but never the build-up. Who heard one tearful version of the story and decided it was the whole truth. A week later, a mutual friend forwarded me a post from Kayla's private Instagram account, one I wasn't supposed to see. A black and white photo of her standing outside a library, captioned, "Crazy how the people who claim to love you disappear the moment you stop making life easy for them. Blood doesn't lie." The comments were full of sympathy. Heart emojis. "You deserve better. So proud of you for choosing you." One even said, "Cutting toxic people out is an act of self-love." Toxic. That's what I was now? I closed the app and stared at the wall for a long time. Not crying. Not fuming. Just stunned. Numb again. I had always known I was the outsider in her story, but I didn't realize how quickly she'd rewrite history to make me the villain. That night, Laura came into the living room and sat beside me without speaking for a long time. Finally, she said, "I didn't know she posted that." I nodded. "She's hurt." I nodded again. Then, "So am I." It was the third time I'd said those words in as many weeks. And still, no one seemed to know what to do with them. A few nights later, I found myself sitting in the garage, just hiding. That's the only word for it. Hiding from the silence of the house, from the tension with Laura, from the creeping feeling that maybe I was the bad guy, that maybe I had failed her somehow. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I played it on speaker. It was Kayla. Her voice was soft, low, like she was trying not to cry or trying very hard to cry so it would sound convincing. "Hey, I know you're probably still mad, or whatever. I needed to say that I didn't mean what I said. About you not being my real dad. I was hurt. I still am. I just don't understand how you can say you love someone and then suddenly decide they're on their own. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's it, I guess." But there was no apology, no ownership, just emotional blackmail dressed up as reflection. Still, I replayed it. Twice. I stared at the concrete floor, jaw tight, chest heavy. She wasn't sorry. She was manipulating. She didn't want me back. She wanted what I used to give her. The cushion, the coverage, the convenience. But what I wanted, desperately, was something she had never truly given me: respect. Later, I played the voicemail for Laura. She listened quietly, then said, "She's trying, in her own way." "No," I said, shaking my head. "She's trying to reset the board, not make things right." We didn't talk much after that, just sat in the quiet. It's strange how empty a house can feel when you're surrounded by furniture, noise, and a person you once believed would always be on your side. I was still paying the mortgage, still cooking dinners, still mowing the lawn. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being part of the family. It wasn't just about Kayla anymore. That's what I realized as I stood at the kitchen sink one evening, washing a pan in silence while Laura scrolled through her phone at the table behind me. We hadn't talked about the voicemail since it happened. In fact, we hadn't talked about much of anything. Our conversations had become transactional. "Milk's in the fridge, trash goes out tonight. I'll be home late tomorrow. Two roommates playing house." I scrubbed harder than I needed to, the sponge squeaking against the steel like a slow scream. My jaw was tight, my chest even tighter. I didn't want to say it. I wanted to just finish the dishes and go to bed, pretend that all of this hadn't changed me. But something in me had shifted. The old me, the one who kept the peace at all costs, who carried the burdens quietly, was gone. And the man who remained couldn't keep swallowing this weight without choking. So I dried my hands, turned around, and said it. "Did you ever actually think of me as her father?" Laura looked up slowly, eyes narrowing in that familiar way that told me she hadn't expected the question, but she'd been expecting a reckoning of some kind. "What kind of question is that?" she asked. "A real one," I said, crossing my arms. "Because for the last 10 years, I've paid like a father, showed up like a father, sacrificed like a father. But now that I've finally said no, it feels like I was just a convenient extra, a stand-in." She blinked, then set her phone down. "I never asked you to do all that," she said, too quickly. And there it was. The sentence I didn't know would feel like betrayal until I heard it out loud. "Yes, you did," I said quietly. Every time you nudged me to just help her this once. Every time you stepped aside and let me take the financial hit so you didn't have to say no to her. Every time you praised me in private but left me hanging in public when she turned cold. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is being the backbone of this family and then getting cast out the second I asked for some support in return. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes were wet, but not from guilt, from defense, from discomfort. You don't understand what it's like to be her mother, and you don't understand what it's like to be the only one who ever put up boundaries. I snapped. I didn't come into this marriage thinking I'd be the ATM. I came in thinking we'd be partners. But every time things got hard, you let me be the bad guy. That's not true, she whispered, but her voice was brittle, shaky. It is, I said. You let her disrespect me. You let her talk down to me. You let her take from me over and over again while you stood there and told me I was such a good man for doing it. She stood now too, arms crossed tightly over her chest. You're making it sound like I never appreciated you. I think you appreciated the help, not the man giving it. The room went silent, thick with history, thick with all the things we never said because we were afraid saying them would break us. But here's the truth I couldn't ignore anymore. We were already broken. We just hadn't admitted it. Laura looked away, jaw clenching. What do you want me to say? That I failed you? That I should have stopped her? That I should have put my daughter second to protect your ego? I laughed, sharp, bitter. It's not my ego I was trying to protect. It was my dignity. My right to be seen as something more than a wallet with a wedding ring. She didn't answer, just wiped at her eyes and turned toward the hallway. And that should have been the end of it. A slammed door. A night spent in separate corners of the house. But I wasn't done. Do you even know what I've given up? I asked. She paused, back still to me. I put off retirement. I canceled trips. I said no to things I wanted for years, Laura. Not because I was forced to, but because I believed I was building something. A family. A future. She turned then, slowly. And now, I looked at her. This woman I'd loved. This woman I'd carried. This woman I no longer recognized in the silence between us. Now I realize I was the only one building it. The next few days were quiet again, but this time it wasn't avoidance. It was surrender. Something had changed between us. Some rope had snapped, and neither of us made any move to tie it back together. We didn't argue. We didn't reconcile. We just coexisted. Like two ghosts in a home filled with memories we didn't have the courage to face. The silence in the house stopped feeling temporary. It became the new normal, like furniture rearranged after a fight you're both too tired to revisit. Laura and I still lived together, still exchanged pleasantries, still remembered birthdays. But the intimacy had drained out, replaced by a cautious distance. She no longer asked about my day. I no longer reached for her hand at night. We had become polite strangers sharing a mortgage, and I stopped waiting for an apology. Not from Laura, not from Kayla, not from the friends or family who had called me toxic in hushed tones or passive-aggressive posts. I stopped needing them to see me as the good guy, because I had finally accepted a truth I'd been running from my whole life. Doing the right thing doesn't guarantee you'll be understood. Sometimes, standing your ground means standing alone. I didn't hear from Kayla again for almost 2 months. Not a word. No apology. No confrontation. Just distance, cold and total. Then, one afternoon, a text. No greeting. No emojis. Just wanted you to know I got into the Chicago program. I'm starting in January. I figured you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no thank you. No acknowledgement of how she got here. And yet, I didn't feel anger. Just a dull ache, like pressing on an old bruise you forgot was still healing. I typed back slowly. I'm glad you got in. I always believed you could. I hope you make the most of it. Then, after a long pause, I added, I'll always care about you, but I won't go back to being your safety net. I need to protect my peace now. She didn't reply. And that silence? That was her answer. That night, Laura asked me if I'd heard from her. I told her yes and read the message aloud. Word for word. I didn't hide it. I didn't dramatize it. When support turns into expectation and love starts feeling like labor, sometimes the hardest thing to do is choose yourself. If this story hit home, tell us your experience in the comments. When did you finally draw the line? And how did it change your life?